Welcome everybody to another exciting edition of Grant Source Live. Today we have a very exciting guest. We have the CEO from one of the largest professional organizations in the country, Mr. Mike Chamberlain. So we're going to get to know a little bit about Mike, his organization, what they do, how they do it. But before we get into that, I have to honor a few of our valued sponsors who have been gracious enough to sponsor this show for us. So first and foremost, my name is Alan Thornton. I am the executive director and founder of Grant Source. And what we do is we simply help organizations find grants so that they can pursue their projects, their programs, their passions, and really their purpose without wasting a bunch of time, energy, and money like we all have in the past. So with that, let's go to our first sponsor. And these guys are near and dear to me because I actually worked for them out of college. They're Paychex. They are the payroll and HR company that will help you go from hire to retire. They are offering our community up to 6 months free on payroll processing, as well as our other sponsor, which is Comcast Business, and they'll help you anywhere from cable, internet, phone, anything you need for your business. And keep in mind, this is on the business side, so they have the fastest internet in Houston right now. So Houston and across the world, Paychex and Comcast, let's give them a round of applause. And with that, let's get into Mike. First and foremost, we thank you for having you on the show. We're gracious that you came here. And usually I ask how you found Grant Source, but I know I knocked on your door and begged you to kind of partner with me. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike.
Sure, and it's certainly my pleasure to be with you today and to be with the Grant Source community. So I'm an association executive by training. I've been in the association world for a little more than 20 years, from the Midwest, and just kind of stuck around here. So we are, the organization that I'm representing today is the Grant Professionals Association. So we are, as Alan said, we are the largest association solely focused on the grants profession, in developing resources and tools and education, and opportunity for connectivity between those who work in the grants profession, those who are involved in every phase of grants, from the process of researching grant opportunities all the way up till final closeout after all the grant money has been awarded, spent by your organization in the manner that it was supposed to be spent, and providing that report back to the funder about how that money has made an impact for your organization and for the people you serve.
Yeah, and the impact is huge. And I'm gonna go off on a limb here, Mike.
Sure.
If I'm too far off, let me know. But just so our audience can kind of conceptualize GPA, you guys are essentially the Better Business Bureau for the grant profession, right?
You might say that. One of the things that we do, one of the things that's been essential to GPA since its founding 20 years ago, is been a code of ethics. So all of our members subscribe to the GPA Code of Ethics, which outlines the ethical behavior of a grant professional. It really sets the standard, if you will, for the actions and professional standards for grant professionals. So all of our 2,700 members have ascribed to that. We maintain that pretty seriously. We have an ethics committee that constantly reviews the code to make sure that it's up to date, and then arbitrates any issues that come before us. Well, if a member's has gone against our code of ethics. So ethics has been important from us from day one. It was one of the founding principles of our founders 20 years ago. They looked at the arena in which people worked and saw that there were some people who were just not always on the up and up, promoting their services as a grant, as as somebody who could help people with grants. And so our founders thought it was very, very important that all grant professionals, those who are truly recognized as professionals, have a code of conduct and an ethics and a code of ethics to rely upon and to follow to provide that professionalism and that professional code of ethics.
And that's huge, because when a lot of people in the past, when they think of grants, they've either think it's scams, they've been burned, they think grants are, you know, that unicorn for people over there, and they've never really seen, right, a grant professional. Right. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring everybody together, humanize it. Obviously, you're an organization that really helps to make sure that doesn't happen to people and people don't get burned.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that we talk about, and our consultants talk about a lot, is the fact that some organizations, and you hear it from board members and from others, that just say, "Oh, just go get a grant for that." And our consultants so often get called into those situations. And almost all of our consultants, the very first thing they do with an organization is they go through a grant readiness assessment. It's that, are you really ready for grants? And the analogy I like to use is a dog chasing a car. And you get the grant, you caught the car. Well, now what are you going to do with it? And it can be scary times. And you know, to back that up, I've had conversations with grant makers and funders, and you know, one of the things that they say is the worst thing you can do is apply for a grant, be awarded that grant, and then turn around and go back to the funder and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what I was signing up for with this grant. Here's your money back." You know, that's disappointing to them. They've, you know, they may have not been able to give funding to somebody else because they gave you that grant award. So it's frustrating for everybody involved. So obviously, grant readiness is an important element that we believe is essential for organizations as they look at grants. And like you said, it's about having a professional who can help you manage that process and walk through that process. It's so important, especially in the early phases of the research, making sure that, number one, your organization's ready, and then number two, that they're matching you up with the right organizations that are funding the type of work that your organization is doing.
Absolutely. And so let's dig a little bit more into that, Mike. When you say ready for a grant, what does that mean? Like, they have to have their programs ready, or you don't just show up on the doorstep and say, "Hey, can I have money?" Right? There's some steps before that.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the steps involved are, depending on who the grant provider is, who's partnering with you? Do you have, you know, are you expecting that this grant is going to fund this full program? What's your approach for sustainability? What happens if you get this grant for a year? What happens in year two? Maybe this is something that's just a one-year program, and that's certainly fine, but be prepared for those questions. Do you have the accounting systems in place to be able to appropriately track the funds and know where they're being spent and how they're being spent according to the program budget that you provided? Are you doing an evaluation of the program? How are you evaluating whether the program is having the impact that you thought it would or want it to have? So, you know, those are a couple of the elements. And like you said, with the program, is this a new program? Is this a program that's been in existence? What kind of data and measurements do you have from this program, if it's something that's been in existence, that proves that if we get this grant, we can expand and serve this many more people? We can help eliminate this problem by this grant. But there's so much more in terms of being ready to not only to apply for the grant, but then to manage that grant once you get it. So, you know, is your board engaged in this process? Are they ready to go out and get grants? Do you understand what the requirements of grants can be on your organization from a reporting perspective? So those are a lot of the different elements that our professionals look at when they're not only evaluating an organization, but the program that may be funded and how it matches up with the grants that are available.
And for a new nonprofit, a new social enterprise, a new, entity that has great programs and great passion, some of that can really be overwhelming, right? And a lot of times they can say, whoa, this is too much for me. I don't even want to mess with grants. But that's what your professionals are here to help with, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you're right that, it may not be the first source of funding that you should look for in a startup situation, although it may also be a good place to look for funding. It kind of depends on, again, your situation. Are you prepared for it? And is there a good match? You probably don't want to come out of the box swinging for a big Health and Human Services grant from the federal government. Because those have, number one, they're a complex process to work through, but secondly, they're going to ask a lot of questions. And if you're not fully prepared for it, you're not going to make it very far. And so then you've spent your valuable resources working on something that's not going to be successful for you or for the funder. I think it's one of those things that as you're looking at grants as a source of funding, they need to be a part of the mix. That's another thing that our professionals talk a lot about, is that grant funding needs to be a part of your full funding mix. So there's going to be people who are legacy givers. There are people who are part of a regular in-kind donation program, or regular contributors to your program if you're a nonprofit. And grants play an important role in that, but they can't be the only source of funding, especially competitive grants, because you're never guaranteed of what happens in the following year.
That's correct. And a lot of times, and you talked about the funding mix, and what we're trying to get a lot of our community over is these grants are real. We've all heard the song and the lyrics, more money, more problems. And that, right? And that's right, but it can be done. And I know your organization has made a huge impact. I'm gonna go off on a limb as well. I was reading some of the statistics, and you can bring me back to earth. But over the 20 years you've been in existence, your professionals have helped their clients receive over $1 billion in the last 20 years.
I'd say that's probably more than fair, because between our members working in a variety of situations, some of our members work for municipalities who are managing community development block grants. They could be managing road funds for those kind of federal grants. So we really span the spectrum of everything from roads and animal shelters to big health science grants from the National Institutes of Health, all kinds of federal grants, all kinds of foundation grants as well, from local community foundations up to the large foundations like the Ford Foundation or the Hewlett or Packard foundations. I mean, it's all across the board that our members are working with organizations, working in organizations and working with organizations to provide the resources to make sure that they are not only presenting the organization in a good light, but they're also making sure that organization's prepared to meet the funders' expectations in what they want to accomplish with their grant funding.
Exactly. And so I want people to know you're a real person, Mike. Tell us where you're from, right? Because grants really are like unicorns to people. They're fictitious, but they really happen. Mike's a real person. Tell us where you're from, Mike.
So, I'm originally from the Midwest. As I mentioned, I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. I live in the Kansas City area now. The Grant Professionals Association is headquartered in the Kansas City area, actually in Overland Park, Kansas, and part of the
beautiful office, by the way. I've been there. I tracked Mike down, begged him to have a meeting with me. What's interesting for me is to have the conversations with our professionals about the impact that they've been able to make with different organizations, whether it's helping them get ready to apply for their first grant, or if it's getting that special program finally up and running. Whether it's like a back snacks program where they're working with a school district and a local nonprofit to make sure the kids have food over the weekend. An impact program like that turns around and you think, well, that's just one kid who got
food for the weekend. Well, yeah, but that made a big difference when that kid came to school on Monday morning and they didn't have to worry all weekend about what they were going to eat. And so they come ready to learn. So, those are the kind of grants that make a huge impact in people's lives. And that's part of the reason I'm in this business. In the association world, we work kind of a little different than most other nonprofits, but I'll be honest with you, I've never written a grant proposal. You probably don't want me writing a grant proposal,
Same here.
but I can find 25 different people to write your grant proposal for you because they are the professionals. And I know that at the end of the day, what I've done is help those grant professionals be the best that they can be to provide the best support for their organization or their clients to make sure that work, that so important work that's being done by social entrepreneurs, by nonprofit organizations, and by cities and municipalities, all of that work that's being done to impact people's lives. I mean, that's what gets me going in the morning. Is I know that I'm helping those grant professionals make sure that those grants do the best that they can, that they can be put into effect for the greater public good.
And as far as tips, just for our audience, I know we've all seen the commercial of, grants to get a new car, grants for your microwave, grants for your kids to attend that basketball camp. But really, right. What are the grants that you see that are most common and people are really securing in organizations?
I think it really becomes program based, and it's that's a hard question to answer, just because, boy, it depends on the foundation. You can look at so for example, in the Kansas City area, we have the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, and some of the grants that they've given out are related to education and dealing with, and to a smaller degree with healthcare. And we also have the Healthcare Foundation of Greater Kansas City. They are very focused on wellness and health in different populations. So I've seen those kind of grants make an impact. But I think the important piece is to recognize that your program may have a funder out there, but you may have to go looking kind of hard for it, because it's about matching the right program with what a funder is looking for. And that's one of the things that we kind of talk about, but we kind of talk about it on the sidelines a little more than in front of people than I think we probably should. And that's about the importance of building relationships with funders. Everybody's all about building relationships with their individual donors. Oh, we got to make sure to send them a thank you note. We got to make sure to, invite them to the gala or whatever. Do that for your grant makers too. They're people too. Send them a thank you note. You may say that, well, it's the Ford Foundation. They're the huge, ginormous thing. Yeah, but it's made up of people. And those people like to hear from people. And they want to know what you're doing and what impact their funds are making in that organization. So whether it's your small local community foundation, it's a large organization, or for that matter, even a large federal grant, there's still people behind the scenes working on those, and they want to know that they're being appreciated just like you are in your role. And so, building those relationships is so important. Even before you apply for the grant, make sure you're building those relationships with the folks in your community. Reach out and check out their websites. Look in places like GrantSource to find out what are they funding? What programs are they looking to fund? So, and this is an important piece. Don't waste your time or their time if they're funding something that's not in your area. And I'll pick on one of my other pet peeves. Don't build a program to go get a grant. If you don't have this program.
Say that again for us, Mike. Don't build a program specifically to go get a grant.
Right. Okay. Don't do it. Trust me, don't do it.
Really love the program, right?
If you've got a program that needs to be funded, that's one thing. But don't go chasing, we call it chasing the grant, chasing the money. I'm a big believer that you have a core set of what you do very, very well. Continue to do that very, very well. Do that to the best of your ability, and then find the funders who want to fund that opportunity. So that makes all the difference in the world.
And that's big, because the other common misconception is, okay, grants are for just nonprofits. Grants are just for for-profits. Grants are just for, but it's really for what they're doing, what programs they have, what initiatives they have, how they're really impacting that community or that project, right?
Oh, absolutely. Picking on another large organization, the Gates Foundation, a lot of the stuff that they do around public health and world health, if you've got a fit there, that might be something worthwhile pursuing. But I wouldn't approach the Gates Foundation to have them work on affordable housing. It's just not what they're targeted at. But there are other foundations that are looking at affordable housing or lead-free housing or any number of things along those lines. So it's about building the relationships, understanding the match, and making sure that you're pursuing what makes sense for both you and the funder.
Understood. And I'll ask you a question. I know I knocked on your guys' door, but what do you like best about GrantSource?
One of the things that, and again, I know you guys are getting started, but I like the energy that you're bringing to the conversation, and that you're working on providing a platform where people can do this kind of research and find that good match for them, and look for those various opportunities. I think one of the things that is so important in this totally connected, always on world that we live in, is being able to find various resources. And as much as we like to think that everybody knows everything, every day I learn how much I don't know. And so, having additional sources like GrantSource to be able to tap into and say, help me find what I need, what resources I need to continue to grow my organization and to be able to have that impact in the community is important.
We appreciate that. No, thank you, Mike. Checks in the mail. No, thank you for those kind words. And what I'd like to do, I know you have a big day coming up. Tell us about tell us what you're passionate about, and then let's get into some of your offers for the community, and I'll show them on the screen.
Sure. Well, I think, as I stated earlier, my passion is around serving people and making sure that our grant professionals have the tools and resources they need to serve their clients and their organizations, which in turn serve people everywhere, in every kind of need. Whether that's somebody working with a K-12 school program to make sure that there's lunches or educational programs, to the municipality that makes sure their fire department has the latest and greatest in gear for public safety to keep citizens safe. That's what drives me, is making sure that our members have the tools and resources they need, and quite honestly, that they're celebrated for that professionalism and the work that they do. So that I'll set up my own segue there into this Friday is International Grant Professionals Day. And so this is our 4th annual celebration of all those who work with grants. And so we want to celebrate the people who work so often behind the scenes, oftentimes alone, working to make sure that those grants that the grant funding gets done and gets to the right people at the right time, matches up with the needs, and then reports out to the funders about what happens with those funds. So we're celebrating you, the grant professional, this Friday, March 9th. We're promoting that widely to make sure people understand the impact that grant professionals have. So follow us on social media, at GPA National, on it is our Twitter handle. But you'll see a lot from us building up to Friday, but also on Friday. A lot of our chapters have celebrations and activities. We really want people to recognize the impact that grant professionals have on their organizations, again, across the spectrum.
Now it's across the country, and then every local city has their own event, correct?
Yeah, so many of our chapters, we've got chapters in 42 municipalities across the country, but it's as we call it, it's International Grant Professionals Day. So we're recognizing grant professionals everywhere. We've got members in Canada, Africa, Europe. We're expanding in Australia. So, we want to recognize those people who do the hard work behind the scenes to make deadlines, get those reports done, and make sure that the funding lands where it needs to be with those folks. But many of our chapters host activities on those days, whether it's a lunch or a happy hour or just anything to celebrate the work that they do the rest of the year to make a great impact in their communities.
Nothing shows that you appreciate your grant professional more than a margarita.
Yeah.
So take them to happy hour. So let me show our audience. It's important to know so we heard who GPA is, what they do, and I'm going to attempt to do this again. Can you see my screen?
I do. Yep. Well, okay. There we go.
Excellent. So when you see this logo, and you can see it in our app, and once you search resources, this is our new version of the app where you can not only track your grants that you saved, the ones that you applied for, and the ones that you received. So when Mike says you need to get a grant, the work doesn't stop there. There's work that has to be done after that as well, and we can track everything for you. So when you're looking at resources, you really want to seek those professionals that have this logo next to it, because they are held to a higher standard, and you will be able to find those resources in our app once you look for resources. But let's talk about your offer, Mike. Right now to our community, and this is our community offer section. If you have not seen it, it's pretty much like a Groupon, but business. And Mike and our friends at the GPA Association have a special offer for this month for any professional who would like to get that special GPA designation and be part of that association and get that tag. Mike, tell us about it.
Absolutely. So we are running a special this month. Our normal membership for our organization is $209 a month, or $209 a year, excuse me, $209 a year. For the month of March, it's $25 off your GPA membership. So a year's worth of membership is $184. And so if you are interested in that, just contact GPA offices, and you can learn more about all of the benefits we provide, including our webinars and various other educational programs that we offer. This would include member discounts to a variety of services and software, but also provide you a member discount to our annual conference. Our annual conference this year will be in Chicago in November 7th through the 10th. It's 3 days of grant professionals getting together and talking about grants. It's an amazing time, and it's amazing education and training for everybody in the grants profession.
Excellent. And you can also go right in here and redeem it in our app. And Mike will that'll send Mike a notification, and you'll be able to take advantage of that great discount. Some of those events that Mike's talking about will also be loaded in our helpful event section. If it's a conference, some of their events, some of their trainings will all be loaded in here as well. So you can take advantage of that during that time. And I want to leave everybody with one final thought, Mike, because we're wrapping up. If you could I know you gave us a lot of great tips, but just one final thought to leave our audience with.
Grants work. That's a little bit of a tagline for us, but that it's one of those things that there's such great impact that can come from grants. And we want to get the word out about that as well, because we want to make sure that people understand that they're not unicorns, that they are really out there and that they really do work and they really do make a difference for organizations and for people's lives. They do work and they do matter.
Excellent. Well, Mike, we are eternally grateful for your presence and being on our show. Thank you very much. I want to give one last thought and a big thank you to both of our sponsors. We're a technology and company, and sometimes our technology malfunctions, but the show goes on. Our big sponsors, Paychex, thank you very much, and Comcast Business for sponsoring our show. And I'll leave you with this. Remember, it's not about the money. It's all about the impact. Thank you. We'll see you on the next episode. Have a great one.